Welcome everybody to Forza Horizon 4, and today we're taking a look at the 2018 Mini John Cooper Works Countryman ALL4. Now this is a subcompact crossover SUV that started production in 2010, with this version being part of the second generation that started production in 2017. And yeah, despite the fact it's a subcompact SUV, it still weighs a fair old amount. For comparison, the JCW convertible that we've reviewed already weighed in at 3,065 pounds. This weighs 3,653 pounds, which is really rather heavy for something that's supposed to be a subcompact crossover. And yeah, it only weighs about 400 pounds less than a Jaguar F-Pace, which is a much bigger vehicle with a much bigger engine and yeah, a lot more space going for it. So yeah, it's a really rather heavy vehicle, which wouldn't matter if this had a lot of power. The likes of an F-Pace has 380 horsepower, whereas this, despite the fact it's got an upgraded 2-litre turbocharged inline 4 engine with heat-resistant turbo and additional intercooler, produces 228 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque. So that's the same horsepower as the JCW convertible that we've already reviewed. But it does have 22 pounds-feet of torque more, but like I said, it does weigh more as well at 588 pounds more. So yeah, that torque doesn't really help outside of a 0 to 60 range. After that, it's really does not have the amount of power that you'd expect for a car that weighs this much. And yeah, which is a great shame really, because I do like the engine that is in this vehicle. Quite frankly, I'd like the torquier engine out of this in the convertible version, because then that would make it even faster. But yeah, there is obviously some compromise with this, with it being so large. You've got plenty of room, as you can see, in the front and the rear. Plenty of leg room there, certainly more than you'd get in a standard Mini. And obviously a bigger boot as well, being a bigger vehicle. But again, an F-Pace, only weighing less than 400 pounds more than this, has a much larger boot and much more rear leg room as well. And it has to be said, has better looks, higher ground clearance, and a much more charismatic engine. So yeah, this really only has the fact it's a Mini and it's an uprated version of a standard Countryman going for it. So obviously it's got, better brakes, better suspension. It's got the decals on the car as well, with the stripes and the like. And obviously, because it has all-wheel drive system, it's got a decent amount of launch on it, and it's obviously able to deal with all that extra power that it has over the standard Countryman. And yeah, that four-wheel drive certainly will help in terms of off-road elements. So whether or not this can actually deal with all that much in terms of off-road, I'm really doubtful about, because the ground clearance is not all that great. And yeah, it does have all-wheel drive, but it doesn't have locking diffs, doesn't have a low-range gearbox, doesn't have anything like that you'd expect on an off-roader. So yeah. It's a bit half and half really, which honestly does not make this all that satisfying in any single area, to be honest. But let's nonetheless get out there onto the open road and see what it can do. So I don't really ever like hating on a vehicle completely. I do like try and look for the positives that are out there, and this does have its positives. I do like the sound of the engine, and yeah, it is quite a talky engine, certainly in comparison to the convertible Mini that we've already reviewed. And that does help in terms of 0 to 60 time. 0 to 60 in 6.2 seconds, which is 0.1 of a second quicker than the convertible, but unfortunately that extra torque and the all-wheel drive system only comes in handy in terms of 0 to 60 time, as its 0 to 100 time is 18 seconds, which is painfully slow. That's 2.1 seconds slower than the convertible. And yeah, it only has a top speed of 41 miles an hour, which is 9 miles an hour slower than the convertible. So yeah, it's really rather lackluster in terms of performance, to be honest. Sure, it has a launch and the 0 to 60 time that is fairly decent, but yeah, this car needs more power to deal with all that extra weight. And I'd really not like to know how slow a more basic version of this is. I was looking at the horsepower readings for the basic Mini Countryman 1, which weighs about 400 pounds less than this, but has only about 130-ish horsepower or something like that. I don't think it's that. I think it's about 100, just over 100 horsepower or whatever, which again, when you're dealing with more than 3,000 pounds, is not going to be all that quick. Now granted, this is the sportier version, so it does have the more power, it does have the more torque, but even so, it doesn't feel very sporty. There's a fair bit of understeer at times, and yeah, you'd expect a little bit more of the power to go to the rear end, considering how much power and torque this car's dealing with, but for whatever reason the power seems to mostly still go to the front wheels, which is not useful when you're dealing with a car that has not only 228 horsepower, but a lot more torque than a standard Mini John Cooper Works would be dealing with. And that car itself still had understeer issues as well, but because it's so lightweight, you could truck it around a fair bit and it would do lift off to oversteer and stuff like that, which would make it fun. Whereas this, you really have to, you know, push it to get it to oversteer at all, so otherwise you're just going to be dealing with lots of really rather, you know, unimpressive understeer. And I just don't like the looks either. Like I said, I don't like to hate on a car, I do like to look at the positives, and yeah, sure, there is plenty of room in the car. It's got a decent sized boot, it's got a decent sounding engine, it's got a decent amount of power and torque, but in a vehicle that is this heavy and this large, it's just not enough power, not enough torque, and yeah, the styling is just all over the place. It's got huge rear lights, even bigger than the convertible somehow, and yeah, it just looks ugly in so many places that it's just not a car that I could imagine seeing on my driveway and just going, yeah, I can't wait to drive that. It just does not excite me in any way in terms of how it looks, and neither does it please me either, because it's just not beautiful enough. And then obviously power wise and acceleration wise and handling wise, it's just underwhelming as well. And yeah, it just seems to be like jumping on a bandwagon really of all these crossover SUVs. It's just not something I think of when I think of Mini. Now that's not saying that I think that they should only do one vehicle, as in the standard Mini and hardtop version. I'm fine with a convertible version. I'd even be fine with a modern version of a Traveller, though the version estate that they've come up with modern day wise is really rather awful. But I would like a small compact estate car. I'd be fine with that. But this and their other attempts at, you know, making the Mini bigger and more practical and, you know, more mainstream just haven't worked whatsoever as far as I'm concerned, and this is an antithesis of that. It really is. It's just sums up everything that I think that is wrong with the modern car industry in terms of car makers trying to be everything with every kind of car model ever. Quite frankly, I'm surprised there's not been a pickup Mini, quite frankly, or or a people carry version of a Mini, quite frankly, because it really wouldn't be surprising me that they go to those kind of lengths to try and satisfy every customer base ever. Don't see anything that's wrong with a certain car company doing a certain kind of car and just improving upon that over the years, whereas nowadays every car company is trying to do every kind of car ever. You've got even Mercedes-Benz doing pickup trucks now, and it's just, you know, it just feels desperate. It just feels like they're trying to clutch at every straw ever that is out there, and rather than just doing what they know best, rather than doing half-arsed attempted versions of vehicles like this, which, yeah, just, like I said, seem desperate, and yeah, wholly underwhelming as a result, quite frankly. I am glad it's on the game though, because yeah, it does give me it does give us a new vehicle to the game that does add more variety to the game, and is a car that you see more like to see on ordinary British roads. Not necessarily this version, but the standard versions, and that is fine by me. More variety is great, but that doesn't mean I have to be a fan of this car, and I certainly am not, and I would never buy a vehicle like this, quite frankly, no matter how much power or good a sounding engine it has. Nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.